Hello and welcome to Technology for Noob. In this video, we are going to create a full stack application using React and Django. Let's have a look how our application would look like. So this is our UI of our application. So this application is all about loan approval. So I have created a dummy project where a user can upload its detail and fill an application form and then get the probability whether his application will get approved for the home loan or not. Or similarly, I have also created another UI where a bank manager would like to do a lots of batch processing of loan applications. So he would upload a lot of loan application with their details and it will send it to the backend, and the backend will return the loan IDs and the probabilities of that particular application getting the home loan approved, and the results are sorted in the decreasing order, so that let's say if the bank manager has uploaded 500 and he can approve at least 100 such loans based on their criteria. So throughout, this is what we are going to learn. Now we would have two ends. So one is Django and another is our React. So React applications are majorly meant for one page applications where a user performs something and they similarly on the same page render the next component. And our backend is for machine learning, that is Django. So I have created a machine learning model and we will learn how to host it and then how to integrate Django and React. This video is going to go through a lot of steps. This is going to be a long video. So our video would be chunked in few parts. So the first part is we have to play the role of a data scientist. So where we would understand the data, we would try to make a model out of it. We will do some pre-processing of the data and then we would have a pipeline. And then the next part is we will deploy that pipeline into a Django server. And the Django server would take few requests like accepting a form, accepting a file, returning the score of a form, returning the batch score of all the files which we have to score. Then we will go to the next level, that is creating the React. We won't be using any UI of the Django or the template views, but we would be using the React this time. So in this React application, we will learn how to create a navigation, how to route between two different pages like this. Then we will also learn how to create a form and how to receive the response from the backend application and render the result. Then we will also learn how to create a form to upload a file and then how to render the response of that particular request which we have done. So let's start with our coding now. Let's start with our first part, that is creating a notebook or pipeline which we will serve in our Django application. So for that, let's do a part of a data scientist first, where we have to understand the data, the fields, and so that we can decide what fields we have to have in our React application in the forms. So let's start with the exercise. So I'm importing the relevant libraries, pandas and numpy. I'm reading the data. So this is how the data looks like. So the data has been provided as loan ID, gender, married, dependents, education, self-employed, and so on. And then we have got loan status. This is our target variable. And as I can see the data now, I have only two values, so it means it's a binary classification problem statement. And I can also observe that there are so many different types of data types are available in this particular data. So we have a categorical information, we have a continuous value information in name of applicant, income, co-applicant income. Then we also have some numerical categorical information or nominal, where the number of dependents, so it's like 0, 1, 3 plus, so 3 plus, so that is the max. And then married status, so we have a mixed. Now earlier, when we have to create a pipeline and we want to do a specific kind of operation on a particular column, I used to use sklearn pandas data library and in that data frame mapper, which gives us the option to associate a kind of a pre-processing to a particular column. So in the latest version of scikit-learn, that is 0.23.1, they have introduced data columns transformer, which is this particular part. Now I have segregated my data columns in this manner. So where I have clubbed all the categorical columns like gender, married in one part, then numerical columns where I want to do a pre-processing of a scaling. where I want to do the scaling pre-processing. So I have kept them separate, and then there is one particular numerical column which I don't want to do any kind of pre-processing. So just to observe how many numeric null values are there. So these are certain numbers now. So we also have to do some missing value imputation. So for that purpose, we are going to import relevant modules or the functions like simple imputer, column transformer as I mentioned earlier, then standard scaling, one hot encoder for our categorical columns. So these are the standard best practices which a data scientist has to go through. So whatever he will do at the end should be able to deploy it in the server, so that the thing which the data scientist would do in his environment should be replicable in the application environment as well. So meaning in the Django, and that's why we wanted a pipeline. So this is how we define the kind of operations we want to do on the particular kind of a data now. So as I have already segregated in categorical, numerical with scaling, and just numerical. So if I want to do a transformation with scaling, I would say pipeline. The first step is the imputer, simple imputer, and the approach which I have chosen is the median, and then scaler, so standard scaling. So that's how we define a pipeline. This is the standard way of defining it. Similarly for the numerical, I just simply want to impute it. I don't want to do any scaling. Then categorical, I want to impute it first with a missing value and just an extra level I'm adding onto the data. So if the labels are male female, then I'm not adding with the male or female which is missing. I'm just making it missing, that's all. And similarly for the numeric transformer, I'm just adding the value 99 to it. I'm not adding any zero or mean. So these are some standard ways which data scientist follows. So the reason behind not giving it to the max or to the minimum. So it's the idea behind this kind of approach is to segregate or separate out those users who chose to not give those information. Let's say you fill a survey and somebody asks you what is your salary, you would choose not to declare it, right? So we want to have such kind of users behavior to be identified separately. We don't want to club them with the normal users who are willingly ready to share their income. That's the whole idea behind giving another value for the missing values. It was just analogy, so just to explain. Now similarly, how this data column transformer helps, it just allows us associating or aggregating all the transformation we want to do with the data, and we are done. And that's how our pipeline is ready. Now the final pipeline where I want to add the model also into the same. So our preprocessor would all have all the pre-processing steps with all the columns. And then finally, I'm just making a random forest classifier. It's a binary class classification. We trained the model. This is how the pipeline looks like. Now from the pipeline, we just simply can score also now. So if I scores on the same training data, so this is how it looks like. So these are the scores. And what I have done here is if I have to show it, so this is how the probabilities we will get. So the first one or the first index is the probability of 0, and the second index is the first index value is the probability of 1. So that's why if I do this, I will get only the probabilities of 1. We don't care about the probability of 0. I can read my test data and I can simply just predict probability and pass the data. All the transformation would happen to it. And then finally, this is how our pipeline works. So it would be able to handle the new data, and if some missing value would be there, it would get handled. If some transformation needs to be done, that would also get handled. This is what we saw just by passing the data to in our pipeline. It was able to do all the pre-processing steps. Now similarly, I will just import a job.lib package and then I will save my pipeline into a file. So our first part is done, where we wanted to create a pipeline, where we wanted to understand the data, and now we know how or what fields are important for us to take or design the form in our React. So we are using all the fields for now. Let's go to the next part where we would create our Django application. Let's start with the second part of creating the Django application. So before I start with the actual coding, I would want to share my Requirement.txt file, and I just want to explain a little bit about it for now. So this is how my Requirement.txt file looks like. And just to clear up, this is the Django version which I'm using. And in this time, apart from Django, I have also installed Django.course headers, which is important for this particular video. And to confirm, this is the scikit-learn which I have used. Otherwise, the column transformer would have not worked. So now I'm going to just do a routine things of the Django, and I will explain a bit in the few moments. So this particular video, I would be using the Visual Studio Code for throughout the time. So this is how our application looks like now. My main project name is Model Backend, and I have added a first app to it, first page. So in here, I have to add few things. And in this Django application, we don't need any UI. So we don't have to add any template. I would just simply go ahead with. So for this application, we need two kind of APIs, where first we would be doing a post, a form, and then in the second we would need a post for a file, and both would result the scores in return. So I'm just creating one function which is called score.json, where the user would send a form, in a JSON format, and I will just return a score whether that form will get approved or not, or the application will get approved or not. And for that we need JSON response, so that we can send the response in a JSON format. So just to clear about for now one. Similarly, we need another another function which says score file. Just in a simple terms to understand, request. Now in here, we would also send a JSON response, but with all the detailed information of each loan ID and the approval probability. So for now, I'm just doing it same. The only thing is, now we are going to accept a file. So we have to add a media URL in our application. To add the media setting, we have to go into the settings and simply come here at the end and just simply say media. This is where the common file would be, and all the files will get saved in this system. Now the second part is, once we have all this, we have to set our URLs. So now in URLs, I have to import the relevant library from first import views. So we will have our first request or the endpoint, that is score.json. So even I'm giving the name as score.json. Now it would be called here views.score.json. Name is equal to application. Simple. Then similarly, I need to accept a file, and that API would be score file, and views.score file name is equal to score. Just a practice, common practice. Now the thing is, we are going to accept a post request without any UI, the templates of Django. So we have to add the CSRF exempt in this particular part here, so that it can act as a API, REST API, and then it can accept a post method. And to do that, we have to call django.views.decorators.csrf and CSRF exempt. Now in here, you have to just say CSRF exempt and pass it, and this will take care about all the post requests for our application. See, I'm not going to prepare a full-fledged Django application in this time with all the error handling and everything. It just for the purpose of creating the entire application, so that we can understand how things works. And there is a complete full tutorial on this particular part of creating REST APIs in Django in a separate video with thorough information. So I would suggest please go through it as well. So right now our URLs are kind of done, and now the views, which we have to now just finish it up or wrap it up. So to do the test, I will use the Postman now. I am not going to prepare a notebook, because most of the people would be familiar with Postman also, and it would be a good practice to do things in the Postman, so that you can create your React application and know how to write the request in the language of React or JavaScript. So the first part is, we also need to host our model. So I will bring the model also in my application. So this is where we created a model file. I will bring it back to our application here. So I'm just dumping it into the root folder, and this model file we have to load now. So to load this particular model file in a default, I would just simply say import job live and model is equal to joblib.load and model file name. So now our pipeline is with us. Now here, first we have to accept a response and then proceed it further, create a data frame, pass it to the model. So that is what we are going to right now. Before that, I will start my postman. So in the postman, we would make a post call to our backend or the Django application, and this is a dummy data which we want to send also. And how I come up with this dummy data is simple. I have taken the first row of the data and these are the column names. So this should be my keys of my JSON which I have to send to my backend for scoring. And the same thing I will write it here in my backend. So let's start writing our code here. So the first thing which we have to do is we have to accept a request and get a response. So let's try it here. So our end API is localhost 8000 and score JSON, and we are going to do a post request here. So let's send a request, but our application is not on. The shortcut to open a terminal is control and tilde. So just as an information, I want to use my another library, another environment, that is PyLatest, and then here I want to start the application. So application is running now and at 8000. Now if I do a send request and I get my, and what is the response? So response I am also getting. So now we have to take the post request, process the data which is coming through. So right now the important part is I'm sending my data in form of a JSON, if you can see it here, and I have all the things in a JSON format, and I'm sending all the information in the body. So in post request, I have, not to break my head now, I know where the data resides. So it's inside. So if I just do print request dot body, so this is where my data would be residing. So let's just do one more time, send it. And as you can see, printed here. So this is where I have received my data in the body. So it's in a non-JSON format. We want to do it in the JSON. So import the JSON here. So I will load it now. So my data looks like json.loads and request.body. So I got my data. Now I have to create a data frame out of it. So if I have to create a data frame, so I need the pandas library here, import pandas spd, and then here pd.dataframe, and then simply I will just pass my data. But as it is in a JSON, I have to add a index here. So that's what I'm doing it. I'm creating it into an index. I will show it how does it looks like, and then I have to pass the data. So let's do print data f and save. Now if I do the print execution again, so data f is not defined because capital D. Execute again, and as you can see, my data does not come in a columnar format. It becomes a series. So I will just simply do a dot transform. So what I said, if it does not make sense, so it's from here I got that idea that it is in a series, and that's why I give the X, otherwise it would have given me error of index issue. So if you do it in your system, you would find it out. So now once I do the transform of the data, oh, not transform, transpose. So now it's in a columnar format. As you can see the difference, the earlier it was in a series and now it is in a column. So this is where we are kind of done with this particular exercise of doing a score JSON. Now we have to just pass this data frame to our model. So I will say score is equal to model dot predict, and we want the probabilities. predict probab, and then from here we would get the scores. I have to pass my data, so data f. So the output of this particular score is going to be a numpy array, which is not supported in the JSON response. So we have to convert that numpy array into a float format. And if you remember, the scores which came out at this particular point looks like in this format. So 0 and 1. So similarly, I have to select the first element, the first index value, that is the probability of 1. So we still need this particular part in our code. So I would just simply say -1. This gives me the first index value, and also it would be in a format of a list. So let's see how our score looks like. If anybody is interested on seeing things in a debugger mode, so you have to just click on here, run and debug, select your Django application as the runner, and then it will make sure everything is up and running for you. There is one thing which it has made a mistake, is activating the Pi36 environment. So this won't be supporting them. Exactly. So leave it for now. I don't waste time right now. I will delete this particular one. So my application is running and the same print score is there, so it is fine. I will just execute this one, and so this is in a list format. So what I have to do is I will just simply select the first element. As you can see here, this is where I'm pointing it. So now this score has to be converted into a float. So float and score, simple. And now this particular one can be passed here. Now let's execute the same request, see it here, and the score came as 0.92. So our first part is done. Now the second API is to create or accept a file, and once the file is accepted, we have to score and send the response back. So for that particular purpose, we would be here, and now here first we have to make an effort on saving the file first. And similarly, we have done a lot of such demo things. So we have done quite a bit on how to save files also in Django in some of previous videos. So I would be quick, but I would give the idea how it actually happens. To save a file or accept a file in a post method, we have to use file system storage library or module of django.core.files, and then we have to accept the file. To accept the file in the post method is a little different than accepting a JSON. So when a user sends a file in a request or in a post method, they send the file in the files option. So in the request also we see a file option. So similarly, I'm asking the user to send the file with a attribute of file path. So this is what I'm expecting from the user or from any other application. So this is the starting point of accepting a file. Then from here on, we follow this mentioned steps. We initiate the file system storage, then we pass the file object which we got from the system, that comes as a binary, and then it also has a name object with it. So we got the name, and then we pass it to the file storage system, and then it gives us the file path where it is storing. And the Django by default would manage your storage of the system, storage of the file in your system, and that is what we have defined in here in the media URL. So it would create a media folder for us, and then it will save the given file to that particular location. So for now, let's see how exactly the response comes. So right now I'm sending the file path as an output of that request. So now the code is ready. Let's try this exercise. I will save it, and this is where my application is running. Now I will make a post request using the postman. Just do it here, score JSON, and in here I am expecting a file path as I said earlier. So here I'm expecting a file path, and in the file path I have selected my file. So let's just select it again. So this is the file which I want to upload to my system or to the Django application. So I send it, and in the response I get to see my file location, and here the media folder got created and the file received. So it's very simple now. We have done it quite a few times now, so I hope everybody is comfortable on uploading a file in Django application. Now as we know, we have received our file and we have got the response also in our post request. So let's read that file. So I will assign a data pd dot read underscore csv, and I will read the file. Now we have the data object. Now similarly I want to score it. So again I will just simply score, and I will save all the output in the score. Here I want all the outputs. In return I will get the probabilities of getting loan disbursed of that particular application. Now to the UI, in the our example UI, we were seeing a loan ID and the associated probability of loan or home loan disbursement. So we have to arrange that data now. So in the data I have already got. So what I will do is I will zip my data and loan ID. So let's check the name of the column. So loan underscore ID. So this will give me all the loan IDs, and we have got the scores also of the same. So I will associate the score. Now they both would be in the zipped, they would be together. And now I will just create a dictionary of it. For I in, so actually it won't be I, it would be JK. So the loan ID and the scores, then J comma K. So this would be my final score now as a output. Score. Let's check the application. So here I will do the same request again, and now you can see we have got our output in the format. The only thing is we have got the loan ID and the probability of 1. In my application demo, I was showing the data in a sorted format. So we can do the heavy lifting here itself by sorting the data in the response itself. So the main idea is we have to actually sort our dictionary. To do that, there is a sorted function, score dot items, each item, and then we would use, and we have to give, it's not through the ID of the loan ID, we have to sort it using the values. So items, and then we have to assign key is equal to lambda x, so from the first element, and that's all. And I would just say simply reverse is equal to true, so that it will sort it in the decreasing order. So once this is sorted, so instead of sending everything in a bunch, I would store all the information in another key. That's, or let's just simply say this is good enough. So I would say score, yeah, this is fine, score is equal to this. Now I will send it back here, and I will just rename it result score. So let's check once again through the postman. So this is good. I will just send it again, and this time score and everything is ordered for us, so that we can render it in the UI as well in a simpler format. And as you can see, this all are in sorted order now. As we can see, the probabilities are decreasing, and it is 1 is the highest here. I think we are kind of done here. We have two requests, which one makes a REST call of a JSON and gets the score back. The another is makes a REST call of a Python and gets, make a REST call of a file post method and then get all the results scored. And we are kind of good now. So this is our finish of the Django application. Now we have tested it. Now we are going to go ahead with React development or the UI component development of our full stack application. Now we will start with our third component, and that is our React front end application. To start with the front end application or creating the React application, you have to first have a Node.js installed in your system. So once you install the Node.js in your system, you have to start the command prompt and then simply say create React app, and npx is what I'm using. So npx create React app, and then you have to say your project name. So one thing which we have to be careful, we are not supposed to use any capital letters. So I'm just going to say front end UI is my project name. This takes a quite bit time. It takes all the things, it installs everything, and it finally creates your web app or the entire framework of the React here. So one thing we have to kind of be aware that React is a component based framework where the main idea is to have a single page application, not much of too many routings in different pages, and then so all those things are possible, but the React's main philosophy lies in the components. So it has its own component, it has its own JSX way of writing the code. So your even HTML tags looks like, so HTML tags get rendered in the required JavaScript with the use of Babel, which comes with the React. So whenever we start a React application, we get a lot of different components started running. So we first get a web server, then we get a webpack, and then we get a Babel, which converts our JSX code into a JavaScript friendly for the browser. So we will wait for a few more minutes so that it starts everything and creates everything for us. So it's almost done. To start our project, we have to just simply say yarn start. So first let's get inside our, so this is the app which got created. These are the relevant files, and I have to just simply say yarn start. So instead here, I would launch my VS Code here, and we will do our exercise in VS Code. So now this is the file structure of all the things. So we have got everything in place. So this is our root file from where all the things get started. So without delay, let's see. So I started a terminal in VS Code. The shortcut is Control and tilde. And then in here, you have to just simply say yarn start. And now, as I said, it will start our web server, it will start Babel, it will start the webpack, and then it will finally make us available this one UI on which we will be working from now onwards. This takes a bit, but so our app is on. This is good. Now, let's get our hands dirty without further delay. So this is our core from where this UI is being rendered right now. So what it is, so as I said earlier, this all are based off a JSX. It's not a HTML. It looks similar like HTML, but actually it's a JSX. So as you can see, div, in normal world we will have a class, but here it says class name. That is what the JSX attribute, and the Babel will convert that into a required HTML or JavaScript code so that it can be rendered in the browser. So I will just remove this particular part, delete and save. And when I save, automatically it gets reflected in my browser, meaning it works in a concept of hard reload where any change in our component gets reflected in our application as well. So I will just simply say h1. So most of the HTML tags are valid here. It just, they are right now in a JSX format. We just have to be mindful of that. So our h1, and I will say hello world. I will save it again, and as you can see, it's now represented. So our dummy app is on. So all these things are working in the root of our world, I mean in our browser, and it all gets attributed through here. So as you can see, we have called the app as a block, and this is the block which it has called. So let's learn how it actually works. So even here we can call any other blocks which could be another component in our web page or in our website. So how it works is, so let's say in our actual final UI we need two forms. One is for JSON and one is for the file upload. So let's create a page through which we will redirect and we will see the form. So I'm just creating another page for now, and we are going to learn how to do routing with this exercise. So in here, in the SRC, I will add another file and any name up to you and any style of writing the file name. So I will just say file upload.js. Now this is my JS file, and I will copy paste the code here, which I copied from the app.js. And in here, I am just simply saying instead of hello world, I would say hello form. And I will create a new function name upload form. And this upload form would go as a name here, and export default, the name of the function is what actually gets rendered through that particular file. So this is kind of a must, and that's all we have done right now. Now we have to import it in here. So import our file name. So let's just simply say file upload and close the tag. And in here I would say what we have to upload. We have to upload this particular function. So I will copy it and I will paste it. Upload from, and we are kind of good enough. Now here I can just simply call this as a block, and that's how you call it. And now you can see the whatever things I will write inside my file upload JS file, inside my function will get rendered in my main page that is rendering through app.js, because I have called this particular block in here. That's all. That's how the component works. But now let's come back to our main objective. We don't want to show it as a block here. We want to show it as a navigational bar, right? So we want to create a navigational bar as our first objective. So to start with, I would also like to add a home page. Instead of just app, I will create a home.js. Now once I have it, I will just copy paste all these things. I will paste it here, and instead of upload form I will say home. Here I will say home. Here I will say home, hello, home, so that we can differentiate. Now in here I have to call it back from, so we have to import. So our function name was our function name was home, from home.js. Now here if I have to call the home, and now you can see hello home. So now let's jump into how to create the navigational bar in our application. To create a navigational bar, I would also like it to use as another component. So I will add another file. I will say navigation bar.js, and I will come back here. I will copy paste, and here I would just say navigator. Just a function name. I will call it here. I will call it here just as an identifier for now. Now I have to import it here as well. Import navigate. So our name was navigate, function name was navigator, from navigation bar, and I save it. Now in here I would call the navigator, and let's see how it works. So far we are in control. Now how to create this navigation bar? So if I have to give that information, I have to write it here. So div this, and then I would create a nav. So within this component, I will just remove it now. I would first have a UL, and within this UL, I would say li, and my first would be home, and second would be form. So I would just simply call it batch processing, so that it makes sense in the world of. So I will save it, and as you can see here, it displayed it. Now I can add another something. Let's say h1. Instead of h1, let's say h2, and I will say world bank, or I would say home bank. Better. So this is how it is. Now in here, this navigation bar, if we just provide a style, we would be able to reflect it in here as a navigation pane. So let me just add the style. So adding the style, you just come here in app.css. All these styles you can keep them as it is. They are not going to bother us. And just so here, so in nav, I'm going to add the style. So I'm at my nav. I have to style it, so I would just simply say display as a flex, and let's see what happens. And now you can see here it started showing, it started reflecting the changes, so it's hard to reload. So now next we can just simply say justify the content and space around Similarly, we can say align items to center, and then we can simply say minimum height of our things. Then it would be, I'm just px. Then I would also give some background color. So background, let's say black, and now I can say color of my font, and that would be white. And we are kind of good. Let's save it. And as you can see here, now the next thing is we have to give some style to our lists or the li components which is in our navigation bar. So if you would have noticed, I have directly given the style to my nav here directly. Now similarly, either I can just simply say I want to give based on a class name. So in UL I would say some class name. So in here, not the standard class, but here we have to use the JSX, and that is class name. And here we would just give some link here. So let's say NV link, and I save it. Then I come here and I give the command. So NV link, that is what the name which I have given here. Just to confirm, NV link, yes. Now here again, I have to just give these styles. So width, I would just simply say 50%. Then simply say display, that would be flex. Then I would say justify the content at space around. Then I would say align the text, align the items at center, and then simply say color as our simple white. That is fine. Now in here we have to give the, so if I save, so it got from ordered, it becomes a horizontal. Earlier it was vertical, as you can see here or observe here. Now the second thing is we have to remove those dots. So the simplest way of doing it is simply now NV link, I can access the li here, and I would just simply say display, again flex, and I would say line, I would say list style, and would be none, and I save it. And we are kind of good here. Our navigation bar is running now. Now the next part is, once we have defined our navigation bar, so our navigation bar is good now. Now we will go ahead and so right now we do not see anything happening, right? There is no link here. We have not given any ref or the href kind of stuff so that we can navigate or change the UI. So let's do that. So by default, it does not just simply is available in our here by saying href or something. To have a routing in our application, we need to import React Router DOM. So there is a library which we have to install first to use it. It does not get installed by default or ever. So for that, I will close my application and I would say npm. So if it is visible, npm install React Router DOM. So this is the package which we have to install, and it's gonna take some time and we will wait for it. So it gave me an error here, which is fine. I have to just close this here and then install it here. So I'm at the right place. I would say it's npm install React Router DOM. So I think this is good. We have to start our VS Code again. So here what we are required to do is we have to create a URL for this particular, or we have to make it active, or that's called routing in here. So I would just start my application again, yarn start, and it will start it up here. I will close this one, and then once that starts, so in our app.js, so routing is kind of thing which we have to care here in the React application. So let's do it. So in here we have to first import relevant libraries or functions from the relevant library. So right now we will import React Router DOM. It will say me that React Router DOM is not used and all those. which is fine. Now from the React router DOM, I want to call, I would say from certain libraries, I mean certain functions, browser router as router, then I would call route, and then I will call switch. So this is good enough. So now I save it, and all these things are not being used, which is fine. I will remove this. So at this particular point, we have to cover our entire navigation in a different format. So what it would be like, so I would call first router, which would be my parent tag here, and this will encapsulate all the things on which I want the navigation to be. So router, now we have the navigator which we have already called. In here I will remove this particular part, we don't need it anymore. We have a home page for that to display. Now inside the router we want to have a very specific route, and that is the function which we have called here. So inside the route tag, what we would say is path, on which path we want to link that particular component with. So like home.js, we want to associate with / only. Like file upload, we want to associate it with file upload, let's say. So I will just simply say processing. That's what my path would be now. So I would just simply say batch processing. Inside the route, I would say which component need to be called. So the component which we want to call is upload form. That would be inside a function. So if we have to call any blocks or a function, it should be in a curly bracket. So now I have got my route. If I save, so the first thing which is gone is the hello world, which was the first notation. Then we have a navigator. So I will have my navigator at the top, because that is this home bank, home, batch processing all. So beneath it, I have my route. Once I have my route for the upload form, we don't need this anymore. So I will just save it. And as you can see now, only hello home is being visible, which is coming through our home.js. So in here, let's say we want to create it for the home also. So the same route, if I want to create it for the home, I would just copy paste all, and I would just simply say here, and for the home, I just need the /, and in here I have to just call home, because home is also one of the components which we have got. So once I do this, it's fine enough. Now here, if I just simply say batch processing and I enter, so in upload form, we should be seeing hello form actually, but we didn't saw it. So it's not a problem. We will come to that. So this is also fine. There is one thing which I have missed, and that is whenever the React.js starts URL routing, it starts from the exact word-to-word match kind of, or element-to-element match. So if it finds the /, which is this one, and that's what we are seeing, it would just stop it there. It does not let you go after that. It just match it and it stops it. So for that, we have to call the switch, and this switch tag actually helps us on doing that. And also we have to add another thing which says exact in the route. So once I do this, it's fine. Now, as you see, the first impact is we are not seeing any hello world kind of stuff here anymore. I will just remove it. If I do batch processing again, ideally it should have given me the component of whatever page I'm going to, but it is not. I think this is the problem here. So if I save, oh yes, I was not even aware that space can create a problem here. So yeah, so there is one thing which we have to mindful now. There should be no space in this route stuff. So okay, whatever. So right now I'm able to see my hello form when I'm in the batch processing, and if I just to remove it and I say, and then I get hello home, so which is fine. But now actually we have to make this home and batch processing as a live thing. So if I click on it, I should be able to see this particular web page. Then for that, I have to go on my navigation bar.js, and in here we will again use the package which we imported, that is React router DOM, and from this package we will import link from React router DOM. So now what this link helps us on making a link for our allies or the lists. So what I will do is I will just call link, I will close it, and I will bring all the things inside the link, and in the link I would give which path I am expecting. So to /, and we are good here. So now you can see the color coding got changed and hence it is active. So similarly, the same thing needs to be done for our batch processing. So I will just take it here, paste it here, and here I would say BATCH batch processing, and I save it. And to do this, we would go to, the color does not look good in here. As you can see, I can now change and switch from the navigation bar. No need to write it in there. So I will go to app.css, link, li, color is white, and we are done. So our first navigation bar is completed in our application. Now we will move ahead for creating a form in our application. So the form I'm going to create in the home.js. So React comes with a nice way of defining class, and that we inherit their component in it. So this is a standard way of writing. So right now our home is being delivered using a function home. Now in here, to create a form, I'm going to use the state, or the way the React helps us on creating the forms in their component basis. So I would say class, and then I will say some name, JSON form, and I would say extend component and then one bracket. Then every component would render something. So we can write some code here. Then every render would have a return, and this return is what we will edit for our UI. So just now be with me. This is where things will get tricky, but still this is the core basic. So if you start your React journey, this is from where you are going to start also. So this is not going to be any kind of alien stuff here. So we are in return, and in return we will use the JSX. So I will say div, and I will say form. So now normal HTML coding, but still we are not doing the plain vanilla normal HTML coding either. So we are doing a JSX form, and this is a good way of manipulating or using JavaScript for writing a form also. So I'm just writing few things, and then we will handle all the operations using the JavaScript. So input, and in input I would say type is equal to text, and let it be as of now as it is. Then we will say input, type is submit, then I would say type then value, submit, and we close it. And once I save it, nothing happens. The reason, we have defined a JSON form, but we have not added it in our component or in our function. So to include it, it's just simple this way, and save it. And as you can see, our form is available to us. Now this is where, when we have defined a class, we would have constructors. So I would say constructor, and all the things in the world of React is props or properties. So I would call constructor, and in the constructor, this is how the constructor is called. Within every constructor, it is compulsory to say super and say props. Simple. Now in here, we would define whatever our form is expecting, right? With me, right? So when I say whatever my form is expecting, the reason we are not handling our form using HTML tags, we have to handle our form using JavaScript. So this is where all the alignment of things happens. So once we have defined our our props, and in our constructor, within our constructor, we would say what things we are expecting from the form. So right now, if my input has type and then name as we have in the standard tag, I would just say input 1. Got it? So now this is the name. So this is we are expecting when somebody would hit on the submit button. So right now I have to declare it in here also. So this dot state, so this is the state of our entire form, and here I would say I'm expecting input, so the same input 1 and the value for it. So let's say for now I would say hello. That's all. So we have only one state. So if I have multiple values, I would just extend it in within this dictionary. So if I save it, nothing happens, but we are in the right track. Now once we have defined our input, now what we have to do is whenever anybody would enter anything in here, that has to be handled in a JavaScript way, not with the HTML tag way. So what happens, we have to create a functionality within our class, which is to say handle our change, handle the change in our inputs. So I would say handle change, and I will expect any event. Any event meaning anything or any interaction which user does. So that's an event for us. So whenever any event happened, so we can just simply do something. Let's say event happened, and we can do console.log. Okay, let's alert first. Alert and something. Let's say if I write now default JJ. Now how to associate this change in here? So input. So what we have to do is we have to say on change. That's the things comes with the JSX here. On change, we have to call this dot handle change, and I save it. Now if I click, okay, there is one more thing which we can do here is the value, and we can bring it from this dot state dot here we have given input 1, right? So input 1. So if I save it now, and you can see hello came there, so I would just, so I made it hello, and so far we are good. Now if I make any change, as you see, I'm getting a alert which we wrote there. So this is good. Now I would just simply say inspect here so that we can keep on tracking instead of alert, because that kind of makes us to do something more. So right now what we want is we want to change this particular value based on the user's given information. So how to do it? It's very simple. Let's just simply first explore again. So when we say alert, let's not say alert, console.log and event. So this is what happens, but event comes with an attribute called dot target, and this is what is really important to us to understand for a form. So now I have redone everything. I will just say A, and as you can see here, this is the target. Now I'm writing anything, and it's showing me the event dot target, and it is not letting me print anything here because everything has to be handled, or whatever I'm typing is not reflecting in the UI. It's just getting populated in my console. The reason everything has to be handled by JavaScript, and JavaScript has to update that value. So what we have to do now is we got this state gets updated with the value which comes with that particular event. So what I'm going to do is this dot set state. What we want to do is we want to set the state whatever target name the user has given. So just to understand, dot name plus, I would just say add a space here so that it's clear, and value. So I will save it, and as you can see now this is fine, but still I'm able to, okay, I will just remove it first, and now hello F D S. So because we are not maintaining the state, but this is how it is. So input 1 is our name, and the hello D or S, whatever is getting printed is our value. So I think it's clear now. So I will just say, I will just remove this. So set state, and our state is a dictionary, and within that dictionary I will have my first block, which would talk about what name I want to update and the value with which it has to get updated. I will just do it here. Now save, and now if I do this one, something is wrong. What time is cannot read property set state of undefined, and this is supposed to be happen. The reason is I have to bind this change to that particular attribute. So this dot handle change is equal to this dot handle change dot bind with this. And if I save it, now I type A, and as you can see, it's allowing me to take the value, and throughout the time it is also showing me how the value is getting changed. So this is the first lesson. We learned how to take the input, at least in the world of React. So everything is getting handled by JavaScript. Now the second part. Now we have to click, let's say I click the submit. Nothing happens actually, because in the submit we have not given what needs to be done with it. So similarly in the form I have to say on submit something has to be done, and that something we have to define here. So similarly we have written handle change, we have to write handle submit, and similarly the input would be event. Now things has to be written here, what needs to be done after return. That's the whole point here. Now for the handle submit, this time I won't miss it. I will just do it immediately. Handle submit, handle submit. And in here I have to just call this dot handle submit, and I save it. So in my handle submit, let's do something. I will say alert, and let's pass the value which we have written here in the submit. So I would say this dot state dot input 1, and we will alert it when the submit happens. So everything takes alert, whatever value we written is now being created here or being shown in the alert. But this is not our objective. Is our objective is to make a post call. Yes, now to make a post call we have to do a lot of here and there things. So let's jump ahead. Let's jump into the writing the actual logic. So we want our form to have the form of entire whatever things the user want to fill. So let's first do that. So in our form we want to have this many inputs. It's going to take a lot of time to me, but I'm just writing it, and you can just do it in your own system as well. So just to give an example how I'm doing it for the first three, so that we all are in same page. So in here I have the text, which is fine. I have the input 1, which is also fine. Right now at this particular point we also have to now manage it everywhere. So this dot state, instead of input 1 we want all the other informations like gender and what value of the gender the value would hold as a default. Then similarly married and what value it will hold as a default, and dependent what value it will hold as a default. So that is first. Then we also need to provide it in here value dot first is gender, then we have married. Okay, so let me first do it. So in my UI it was everything was in a table format, so we have to do it in the table format here as well. So I will call the table. Inside the table the JavaScript or the JSX asks us always to have it inside the T body. So that's what I'm going to follow, otherwise it throws an error in the console for like so much time. In here I would just before submit here. Now all my so inside my T body for the first one TR, and I would say gender. So in the tr I need to have td. That's how. And the next, this particular one, I will just cut. I will say td. Then I will start another td. I will delete this rest and I will finish it here and I save it, and it's perfectly fine now. The another thing which I have to do is I have to add the style. So I'm going to add the style in here as I'm using the plain vanilla table. So this is fine. Now it looks more. Now in here, as I have done for the standard, I mean for the gender, I have to do for all the other variables which we want to use it to fill it as an input. So now I'm going to add everything and I will just explain what it is. So after adding this, I have to add all these variables in our constructor as well so that it can be managed. So after adding all this information of a form, I have to add all these values in our state as well, which is here. So I have it ready. So in here, I will just remove this. I will replace it with this one. So it has all the values. And now if I save, I get my form filled. Now when I upload, when I submit this form, I have to make a REST call with this values changed based on what user has given. That get handled by using this handle change function. Now with the submit, we have seen it shows us as the console log or the alert. Now what we need to do here is in our handle submit, we have to aggregate all those data which get reflected or changed by the JavaScript by the event which the user has given. We have to do a post method or the post call here to our REST service of Django. So now comes the interesting part. Let's say in here I have written hello world. So where I have the hello world, I will make it uniform with what we have seen there. So in our home.js, instead of hello home, I would just simply say this one and I would just change it to something else and enter details to get approval chance of your application, which is fine. Now coming to the main point where we have to do a post call of handle submit. Now there is one more interesting thing. In my actual UI, I was also showing the result in the same page. So right now in our render where we have a form, I will encapsulate it inside a div which is here, and this div gets closed here. Now after this I will add another div, and what it will do is div, and I will say the probability of score or getting approval is something, and now that has to come through from our backend. So right now let's do an exercise how to show it. So I will just simply say score, but this is not gonna work. I have to say this dot state dot score, and now this state dot score we have to handle it or manage it in here. So I would say score and some value for now, let's say 1, which is fine now. So if I do this, so div, can I do it here? And yes. So the probability of getting approval is 1, which is coming from the default. Now let's say by submit action, which we have here, I would just update it for now and let's see how it works. So I would say this dot set state of what? We want to set the state of score with, let's say 10, right, for now, and save. And if score is not defined, okay, good enough. This dot state dot score, and we are here. Let's submit, and that submit action is not able to update the value. So then something is not correct. Actually, if I just try it one more time and submit, perfect. So what we have to do is event dot. So that is what the problem was. The value was getting updated, but it was not reflecting. If you were not able to see it, just observe it here at this particular point. So if I submit 10 and it gets back to 1 again back. So the reason is we have to call prevent default. So event dot prevent default, and we are good. Then now simply I just submit and now 10 and it stays there. So that's how it works. Now we have learned one thing. Now we have to just do the post call. To post to post a call, we have to use a fetch library of the JavaScript. And I have a very tricky, hacky way of what code has to be written. I can just simply come here in my postman and I click on the code, and in code, if I select JavaScript fetch, it gives me what needs to be written. It's simple, right? So that's what we have to call here. So this is the code, but I will be writing it again. So just to show how to get, if you get stuck or somewhere, this is how you can get a code ready for you, for yourself, to save your some time. So to start with, we will start by defining our variables. So in here, if something is not supposed to be changed over the period of time, you define it by using const keyword. So I would just say const and I will say URL. Now my URL would be what? So again, I will get it from here. So this is my URL which I want to call. So this is my URL now. Similarly, I would have another const which would give what are the options we want for our request to be made. So I would say request opt. So this is now my variable. Here I would say method, and my method is post. Then I would say headers, and my headers would be, because we are sending a JSON response here, so my header would have value of content application JSON. So now we are at the right point. Now here we have to just, so this is good enough for a request header and the URL. Now next is we have to create a body on which we want to send the data across to the post method using post method. So I would say const, this we are not changing in this part, so I would just simply say body data, and this particular one we want to send through which the user has changed, right? We don't want to send the default one. So the way we have written here, the simple thing has to be written again, but in a different manner, and it's going into a body, so it has to be in a string format rather than a JSON format. So what I would do is JSON.stringify. This converts any JSON to a text or a string, and then here I have to write a lot of things again. So gender, and this would be this dot state dot gender. Similarly for everything I have to write, so I am just going to do it. So here we have, then I have added the all the others. So area, then education, just so that we can see it, then application, which is correct, then loan term. So all the forms are getting filled here. Now we have to call the fetch part. So this is where things gets closed. Now I would fetch. In the fetch I would say URL, and this is going to be pretty fast, so I don't see any point of using await, but using await is always a good practice, and we will see how to do it in our next part, which is the form file upload and getting the response back. So fetch, then our entire URL. Then once this would bring, so the fetch has already got the output, let's assume here. So after the fetch happens, we say then what needs to be done with that. So we want to say, okay, save the output or get the output and convert it into a JSON format. So this is what we give as a command. Then if I want to do another, then what to do with that afterwards? Then we want to take that JSON format in some other format, let's say, I mean just a variable declaration, and we want to update our score which we have defined here. We want to update our score with the outcome which we have got from the backend. So if I see here, I get a JSON response with a score key and the values associated to it. So in here, I would say this dot set state of, so what we had done in the on submit here, set state score, inside here score, and what would be respj dot, and I think we are kind of done here. Body data is assigned a value but never used, which is fine. We would pass it in here. So when we are passing it in here, we want to send it in the body. So just to confirm, if I see the code, here you can see body raw, and raw has to be JSON stringify. So here body is equal to body data. Save it. Body is not defined. Actually, this has to be inside our this part, and now this part needs to be pulled back down here and save it. Unexpected, which is fine. I have to just do it this way, and I come here and I submit fetch URL. Okay, handle.submit constant, and the error which I found is typo method post. I submit and I see another problem here. What is wrong? Everything has some or other problem today. Cut, paste, save, and submit again. Finally, I wanted to reach to this particular error. So now what this error says is no access control allow origin. And this is what we have to make our other system, that is our backend, to allow the cross header calls, right? So, or course header. So what we need to do is we have to be here in our Django application, and in our settings we have to allow course header. So the first we have to add in our installed apps course header. That is the first change. Second change is we have to add this particular middleware, course header dot middleware dot course middleware. So this is second change. And then we have to add another configuration, and this is the third change. So once I am done with it, which is here, I am all in right place. Just let's see if my application is up and running or not. Yes, it is running. Now I submit button, which is fine. I will just restart it. This is also running, which is fine. And in here we have a score file, which is not correct. We have to call score JSON. I call it here score JSON and I save it. I come back here, I submit. Okay, still compiling. Uploaded, submit, and as you can see, my score got updated. So finally something is done, and that is the first part where we wanted to have. I will just add one h3 and then I will close it here. h3, I save it and I submit it. I got my score. So our first part is done of our application, that is having a form updated by a backend Django, and the UI is created by the React. Now we will come back to the next part, that is batch processing. And in here we want a file to be uploaded, and this uploaded file should go to the Django system, and from there we will get these codes and we will show a list. So let's start with the third part of our React app. So in this particular part, we have to cover how to upload a file, then make a post call. But now, as we can think of, when we send a file, it can be a big file as well, and it can take a lot of time to process. So right now in our previous fetch or previous post call, we were not doing, or we were not awaiting, or we were not expecting any delay in the response. But in here, we have to be prepared for a delay in our response from the backend server. And that's why we would call the fetch using the async function. Now in here, our form is not a big deal, but our output is of a big deal. So we will get a lot of output from the backend in terms of a dictionary or a list, and that we have to populate in our UI. So let's start with building the functionality for our upload form. So same, I would again take path of creating a class. I would say form batch, then I will say extends, and extends to component. And in the component, as you have seen now, kind of a familiar, we have to say first render. In the render, we would say return, and in return we will return our JSX. So here I would say div, and in the div I would create a form, and in this form I would have a, let's say, a label for now which says batch processing. I would be careful about my input. Type would be file, and let's say name is equal to select file. We will come to the on submit later, and this is how our input get defined. And then we need another input which says type is equal to submit, and then name value is equal to, I save it. Form batch not used, form batch has to be called here. Now we don't need, okay, let it be there for now, and we call the component. And in here I can see my file. The another thing is I would not want batch processing here. I would just simply give it as a heading in here, which makes more sense to me. Batch processing, choose file and submit. Now in the choose file we have given a name, select file. What we're gonna do is we have to create a constructor here, constructor which would take, a constructor would take props. Then in here I would call super, which would take props, and this. Now I would say set state, this dot state. So this dot state, then I have to update it. So this dot state is equal to, I have my first element that is select file. I would just define it here, and that would be null for now. And then yeah, this is good. Now let's say once my response is received, I want to show something here, right? That's the whole idea. So I will add, can I do it here, div, and I want to say whether file got posted or not. I mean, in a simple word. So response from server, I would say null, let's say for now, or we can give a boolean, but for now let's start with null. This, so in here I would say this dot state dot response for server. So we will come to this later, but right now, so let's say we have this form, I have rendered it, then now I have select file. Once I have my select file, we would want when the user select, it should actually get accepted by the JavaScript. So right now we have to say handle file. We will create a function like we did earlier for our normal form. So in handle file, I will call event, and whatever has to be written, I will write it here. I will just close it, this one. Now earlier, which I forgot, so this dot handle file is equal to this dot handle file dot bind. So once we have it, we will call it here. On change, call this dot handle file, which is fine now. So when we will reach here, let's say console dot log event dot target dot value, so that we see if it really works or not. So we come here, choose file, we upload a file, and it reflected, meaning it is working. I mean, in simple words. So as we can see, the log name also came in here. So right now we are good here, and our kind of work is not completely done. Now once we see that file, we have to reflect it to our select file. So in here, what I have to do is this dot set state of what? So we would ask event dot target dot name, whichever it gets, and from there whatever value it has. So event dot target dot value, and we close it here. So can we reflect it? What file has been chosen here? Dot select file, choose file, select a file, and we can see the file here. So we are kind of good in this particular part. So we are able to save it, we are able to retain it using the JavaScript. Now the next part is we have to handle the upload. So when I have to handle the upload, I would first create a function handle upload, and I would say event and then done. So I have to attach it here. So from on submit, I want to call this dot handle upload. So which we are fine now. Now in here, in handle upload, as we have already discussed, we have to do a fetch, right? So the first and foremost is we have to bind it first. So now this dot handle upload is equal to this dot handle upload dot bind. Save it, which is fine. Now in here we have the event handle upload. Now likewise earlier, I would just prevent it from getting reset. So prevent default, and I close it. Now once we are here, our main objective is to upload the file to the relevant place. So to know more about how it actually works, so we have already created this score file, right? And we were pushing a file there. So same, I will come to code, and I can see in a script fetch how to send a fetch file to the server. So this is what it is now. So we want to add a file path, which we will do. Then file input dot files. So the first element and then the name. So this is how we want to send a form data. So we will create a form data. We will send these values, which we have stored in this dot state dot set file. I mean, where the file element is select file. And then we will do this particular call. So in here, if I see, our request option has method body. In the body, we have the form data, and we are just sending it. So I will just close it, and I will now start writing it here. So first and foremost, I will create some variables, constant, my URL, and my URL is this one. Once I have my URL, I will create my another constant, that is the file which we want to send, file to send. So just one thing to remember. So whenever we upload a file here, it gets read in a binary format, and that's got sent to the system. How to get to know about it? So even if I see here, I will just send it one more time, and we get all these things. I will come back to the code, and as you can see here, if I see the Python requests, so it's written in a binary. I mean, it has been read in a binary, and it's being sent So similarly, same action would be happening in my JavaScript fetch as well. So that's why we want this kind of a functionality to send the data. So constant, whatever file we want to send, so that is our this dot state dot select file. In here, this is second element. Now let's see how does it look like. Console dot log and file to send. Let's just view it once. So I have my upload URL is okay. That is, I select my file, which is fine, and now I click on submit, and in the submit you see it has been printed again. So that is what is happening in here in the file to send. Now the next thing is we have to prepare our form data, which we saw in here. If I open the code, so this form data, I'm just doing what exactly is written here. So I will just copy paste it and I will paste it here. So my where form data which I created, now append in the form data, this operation needs to be done. File path is what I am expecting in my Django application. So in here I would just simply say remove all this dot state dot select file, which is fine now, and in here in the name of in the position of the name, what I have to do is this dot state dot select file dot name, and we are good. So this is how we created our form data. Now the next thing is we have to create another variable which we will have the request options. In the request option we have now method. In method we would say post, then we have body, and in the body we would send the form data which we have just created, and I think we are good here. So this becomes my request option. Now the second thing is, as I said earlier, this process can take a quite bit of time to get the response back from the server, and that's why we want to use await functionality or the async functionality. So if we would be writing it in a function way, then we have to write it in a async functionality, and that's why we have to change this part a little bit. So in here I would say async, and then the value event on which I'm expecting, and then this way, and it's done. This is what the change we needed to do from the previous to this one. So now from here onwards I can have await functionality in my values. So I will say another variable which is going to be constant, a response, just a variable name, is equal to await, which is, this is really important here, await fetch our URL which we have created, and then the request option which we have just created here, request option, and then close it. Then the next part is whatever is coming to us we have to wait for it. So constant the response from the system in second variable name, await, then whatever response we have got from the previous .json format, so that we can read it. So far we are good. Now how to show this response back to our system and back in our UI, and this is where in our state we have only kept two values, select file and response from server. So we can take the response from server and update it with the RESP2 which we just created. So this dot set state, in the set state I would say response from server and RESP2, and if I check here my response come in a result. So dot result, and that's how I updated my response. So let's save it once and see how our UI behaves. I click, and I will also keep an eye on my this system. I will click on this file and I click submit. An uncaught type error called execute append on form data is not of type blob. So the reason for that particular error is because we have taken the file as a value which is absolutely incorrect. So instead I have to say files and I have to select the first element and we are kind of done. But now we have to remember one more thing. What we have done at the end here is we have printed the select file, which was just the name earlier, but now it's a blob or it's the binary object here. So this will also start creating a problem. So let's just see once. I will just select one thing and see it started giving me an error again, and it says either you show something which is HTML format. So this is not an HTML format. So I will save it back, and this time I will just simply say train and submit. And if I check in here, it has got the request. At the same time, now we want to show that result in here in a tabular format. And also how to confirm whether we have received the value or not. So in here, I have saved it in the RESP from server and dot result. So I will just, instead of that, I will paste it here. I save, I choose the file, I select it, and as you can see, the output is displayed. So we will now arrange it. So it's like ID and the score, ID and the score, ID and the score. This is good. This is good. We are at good place now. Now there is one more interesting thing which has to be understood. So right now, whatever we have done is inside in this class, right? Everything is written in here, and whatever we want to return was written in here. So let's say right now you want to publish that result here. So either you would use this response, right? You would just get it, and now you have to write a loop here to make it valid. So that it looks in a tabular format. But to write anything kind of a loop, or in JavaScript world, we have to write dot map to create a tabular data from this one particular large array, and that cannot be done in this particular part here. That is not even at all possible. The reason, in this particular variable we cannot say dot map and start our work. So that's where we will use the render component. So whatever is in here in return, we won't write it here, but actually we will write above the return, and that value we will bring back into the render. So let's see how it can be done. I would say just give yourself some time and think about what I just said right now. Can you do a dot map here with this particular way? I tried and I found the solution by writing everything in the render. So now in here, I will just say, I will define variables. Let's say the response which I have got from the state. So my state is RESP from server. So I would say iterate data is equal to this dot state, not set state, state dot. So this will give me all the data now. Now from here onwards, I have to do is I will store it in some other thing. So constant array table is equal to iterate data dot map. Once in the map, I would define a variable. So once I have my X, I need to create a table here. So let's first show it. X only. Let's say only X. So if I save, which is fine, but I have not used the array table, and also if I read here, it says but never use no used parameters, which is fine. So in array table, can I call this array table here? I think yes. I call this array table here, and again it gives me another error, cannot read property map of null. Now this has to be understood. So right now we defined our variable which is in state here, rest from server null, and when we are loading it first, it's not going to be iterated. It's not an iterator object, so it cannot be iterated over. So that's where we have to have another information whether we need that or not. So I came up with a hack, and that is I will create another variable and I will call it output is equal to false. So if output would be false, I won't be doing all this operation, and if output gets true, I will do this all operations. And what I'm gonna do is once I reach here, and in here, after all this response, I will set this dot set state to output to true, because we will get the output after the loop runs. So now in here, I will just remove this now, as we have got the hold of it. So I will first, instead I will get this value, which is fine. Now I will also check whether my output is ready or not, and I will call it checkpoint, and I will say this dot state dot. And now in here, what I will do, if, so now conditional statement has to be written. So if my checkpoint would be true, which is if it is true, if my on submit button sets it's true, then only this all code would get executed, and it would be like const table data is equal to my iterate data dot map, and in map I would have x, and right now I'm just going to print it. I'm not going to do anything right now, and x, and I will just close my this. Now from here onwards, at least now I would see my x. Now else nothing needs to be done. So I would just simply say table data is equal to no response just for now, and I save it, and it says okay this way, and table data is not defined. So if I do this, it still says me expected an assignment or function, all this. The reason is we are returning a iterator, which HTML or DOM does not understand actually. So we have to write it in a some tag which it can be represented. So a list tag just for the starter, and I save it. And now let's just simply make a call, which is still fine. Cannot read property map of null. True, perfect. We are not bothered about it. At least it is working. Now in here, we still have the problem if the data is not completely pushed or fetched from the server. And that's why it is making this problem. And to do that, we have to just reorder one thing, and that is because this is getting set before even setting the result. So I will just do it again, response, and as you can see now I'm able to see the values. At least now it is working. And now this is just about the div which we are rendering, so we have no problem with it. So right now I have to arrange them in a tabular format. So we have already dealt with the issue of not having the response and then finally showing it. Now at this particular point, the way we want to render it is using a table. So not by using this thing, we want to render it using a table. So how to render it using a table? We have to add a table segment here. So in here, so this table data which we have created, so this is where the map actually stopped. So I would say final table data is equal to, it has to be in final table, so table, and as mentioned earlier it has to be within a body. Within my body I would have tr, in this tr I would have td which says id, and then I need another td which says the probability. Once we are done, what I will do is I will add this table data and I will perform. So what I will do is in here I would say tr, then I will have td, and I will pass my x here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my y here, and I will pass my z here, and I will pass my z here, Now the X, the first element is my IDs and the second element is my probabilities. If I save it, what happened here? TR, TD, TD, TR. Oh, sorry. I do not need another TR. And now let's do it one more time. Test data and we are good. So here I have my table and this table should have the properties of this particular CSS. Why it is not able to take it? Oh God, final table has to be rendered here. Save it. Final table is not defined, which is good. I have to do it here also. Final table data is not defined. Table data is this and then const. Choose a file, test loan, submit. Oh. From here I have to remove it. Choose a file, test loan, submit. Finally, so all demo is kind of finished. So home button, submit, probability get changed, batch processing, probability get changed, blah 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 blah. So overall, at the end of this video, it was kind of a long process to do in the React, but I'm glad I did this exercise. So in last 4 days, I learned the React. I was able to implement it and somehow I was able to manage to prepare the video as well. Thanks for the people who asked me for this particular tutorial. Special shout out for Naman and Manu who said they would really look forward for a React integration. My feedback after learning the React, yeah, it's little bit more effort for writing if I have to create some application. But yes, it kind of gives me a more overview how the front end developer has to expect the output from the backend server or any microservice. So it's kind of a good exercise for me, and I'm hoping I would make something more interesting after learning the React. The learning curve for the React was quite steep. I was able to do things because I was kind of clear what task I am looking for, and most of the things where the JavaScript things came into the picture also were kind of easier to understand, and there were a lot of supports available in the online community or maybe in the Stack Overflow. So there is a ton of things to be learned in the React. These are the basic which I learned and I was able to create this application. Thanks for your patience. I hope you are able to understand this particular video and this particular full stack application development. And I would recommend to comment your thoughts. And if you are stuck somewhere, please let me know. And I hope you have a great day and happy learning. Thanks for your time and have a great day.